I pulled into my driveway after my weekly visit to the cemetery, and my heart didn't just drop, it shattered. There was a massive moving truck parked on my curb, and two guys were casually hauling Lily's bed out the front door. The purple butterfly sheets she'd picked out herself were still clinging to the mattress, flapping in the wind like ghost wings. I sat there in my car, gripped by this cold, paralyzing shock, counting exactly 3 heartbeats before the rage kicked in. This wasn't a mistake. This was an invasion. My mother-in-law, Margaret, was standing on the porch like she was the CEO of my life. She was draped in an expensive new suit, her signature pearls catching the afternoon sun as she pointed toward the truck like a general directing a battlefield. She had timed this with surgical precision. She knew Tuesday was my day, the one day I spent hours at Lily's grave trying to find some semblance of peace. She waited until I was gone to dismantle my daughter's sanctuary. As I walked up the path, clutching a bouquet of daisies I'd forgotten to leave at the headstone, Margaret didn't even have the decency to look guilty. She just checked her watch and said, "Oh good. You're home. We've made excellent progress." She started yapping about how Jason's miracle baby needed a room by Christmas, and how it was best to start fresh. I felt like I'd been slapped. Fresh? My daughter had been gone for 4 months, and Margaret was already treating her memory like yesterday's trash. I was about to go nuclear, but then Margaret said something so out of pocket about Lily's legacy that I realized this wasn't just about a room, it was a total erasure. "Jason's baby is due December 15th, Margaret announced, supervising the movers as they struggled with Lily's bookshelf. She had this smug, I know best energy that made my skin crawl. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Finally, a grandchild to carry on the family name. We're turning this into a proper nursery. None of that purple princess nonsense." Those words, "purple princess nonsense," hit me like a physical blow to the chest. Lily had picked out every single inch of that room during her last good month, back when the cancer had retreated just enough to let her dream about a future she would never actually see. To Margaret, those dreams were just clutter. She told me we needed to focus on the future and stop clinging to the past. I asked where my husband Thomas was, and she just waved me off like I was a bothering fly. "Thomas is at work. Obviously someone has to pay for all this," she said, gesturing to the expensive movers. She claimed she was handling everything, so I wouldn't be bothered with details during my grief. She went behind my back because she knew I'd never allow this. Inside, the house was a disaster zone. Boxes labeled "donate" and "trash" were lined up against the wall. My daughter's artwork, the drawings she'd made while sitting in a chemo chair, were stacked carelessly by the door like they meant nothing. Margaret thought she was the one holding all the cards, but she was about to find out that she didn't even own the table we were playing on. I watched a mover reach for Lily's drawings, and I snapped, "Careful with those." Margaret followed me inside, sighing like I was being a dramatic child. "It's just childish scribbles, Veronica," she said. Then she hit me with the ultimate insult. "A man needs living children, Veronica, not shrines to the dead." She actually called my home a mausoleum and told me I couldn't expect Thomas to stay here forever. She was so confident, so sure of her position, because she thought the Harrington name gave her power. She started talking about how the family home should stay in the family. That's when I pulled out my phone and pulled up the property records. "You're right, Margaret. It should stay in the family, my family." I showed her the digital deed. My grandmother left this house to me. Thomas moved in after we married, but the deed never changed. I watched the color drain from her face as she realized that she was currently trespassing in a house she had zero legal claim to. I told her that while I appreciated her initiative for Jason's baby, he'd need to find his own nursery space, because this room wasn't going anywhere. Margaret's obsession with bloodlines was about to backfire in the most embarrassing way possible. Once I brought up Jason's medical history, Margaret tried to pivot, acting like biology was the only thing that mattered. Jason's baby will carry on the family blood. That's important, she said, defensively. She was so hyped about this miracle baby that she didn't even stop to think about the math. I looked at her and asked, "Did Jason mention his medical history when he shared this wonderful news?" She looked confused, claiming Jason was perfectly healthy. Unlike Lily, I didn't let that jab slide. I reminded her about the permanent procedure Jason got 3 years ago when he and his first wife decided they were child-free for life. Thomas was the one who went with him for the recovery weekend. The vasectomy, Margaret. Remember? Her face shifted from smug to sheer confusion. I pointed out the interesting timing. Jason divorces his wife, starts dating Jennifer, and suddenly, despite a vasectomy, there's a miracle baby. I wasn't implying anything. I was stating facts. Margaret's perfectly composed face finally started to crack. Just as she was about to explode, my phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. He had no idea what was happening. Margaret tried to call me dramatic, but I was just getting started. I asked her if she noticed the security cameras we'd installed when Lily got sick. Lily was terrified of someone breaking in when she was too weak to move, so we had the whole place wired. Everything's recorded, Margaret. Everything's backed up to the cloud. I showed her my phone, the live feed of her directing the movers, her calling Lily's things nonsense, and her admitting she planned this for when I was at the cemetery. I told the movers to put everything back exactly as it was, using photos of the room for reference. Margaret tried to stand her ground, saying she wasn't leaving until Thomas got home. "Thomas is about to get a very interesting phone call," I said, already dialing. I sent him the link to the security footage before he even picked up. When he answered, he sounded tired, asking how the cemetery visit was. I told him his mother was here with some interesting news about a nursery for Jason. Thomas went silent for a second, and then the dad rage kicked in. He wasn't just coming home, he was coming for blood. I put the phone on speaker so Margaret could hear every word. Thomas's voice was cold, a side of him I'd rarely heard. "Mom, if you're listening, don't move. Don't touch anything else. Don't speak." Margaret tried to play the victim, whimpering that she was just trying to help, but Thomas roared over her. "My daughter has been dead for 4 months, and you're gutting her room." He told her that was the room where he read bedtime stories, where Lily told him she loved him for the last time. He told her he'd be there in 20 minutes, and hung up. Margaret stood there frozen, her perfect composure finally shattered into a million pieces. I sat on the couch, exhausted, and told her the worst part. Lily actually loved her. Even when Margaret made it clear Lily wasn't real family. Lily had spent hours making her a birthday card, despite being weak from chemo. I told her it was probably in one of the boxes she'd labeled trash. Margaret actually started digging through the trash boxes. What she found inside changed the energy in the room instantly. Margaret found it in the third box, a purple construction paper card covered in shaky handwriting and way too much glitter. She read it out loud. "To Grandma Margaret, thank you for being in our family. Love, Lily." Margaret's hands were shaking so hard the card was rattling. I told her, she made you part of our family, even though you never made her part of yours. Just then, Thomas's car screeched into the driveway. He burst through the door in his work clothes, his face a mask of pure fury. He didn't even look at the furniture. He went straight for his mother. "Get out," he said, his voice deadly quiet. He told her he was done with the subtle jabs, done with the biological grandchildren obsession. "She was my daughter," he said, touching the doorframe of Lily's room. "She called me Daddy." I held her hand through every treatment. "Don't you dare tell me she wasn't my real daughter." He told her Jason's baby could have a room in Jason's house, with Jason's money, but they were finished with her. Thomas kicked her out and told her if she ever touched anything in our house again, she'd never see us again. But the drama with Jason was just beginning. Margaret left, still clutching Lily's card, until I made her hand it over. Thomas took it like it was made of spun glass. We spent the rest of the night putting Lily's room back together. Every stuffed animal, every drawing, every book. We sat on her bed as the sun set, the room smelling like her strawberry shampoo. Thomas confirmed what I suspected. There was no vasectomy reversal. Jason was actually terrified of being a father, and always had been. If Jennifer was pregnant, it definitely wasn't a Harrington miracle. My phone buzzed again. A text from Jennifer, Jason's girlfriend. It said, "Could we talk? I think there's something you should know about the baby." Thomas sighed and said we'd deal with that tomorrow. Tonight, we just held each other in our daughter's room. The room would stay exactly as it was. Not as a shrine, but as a promise. As for Margaret, if she ever truly understood the love she'd thrown away, it would be a bigger miracle than any fresh start she could imagine. We thought the nightmare ended when Margaret walked out that door, but my phone is still glowing with that message from Jennifer. "See, there's one thing Margaret forgot in her rush to replace Lily. In this house, the walls don't just have ears, they have digital receipts." Thomas and I are sitting in the glow of the butterfly lamp, but the miracle baby's secret Jennifer is about to drop might not just ruin Jason, it might expose why Margaret was really in such a hurry to erase my daughter's memory. Is Jennifer an ally, or is she the next player in Margaret's twisted game? And what exactly did those security cameras catch when Margaret thought nobody was looking? I'm opening Jennifer's next text right now. If you want to see the footage that changed everything, subscribe to Revenge Diaries and drop next episode in the comments. Trust me, the real revenge hasn't even started yet. In the previous episode of Evil Mother-in-Law Caught on Camera, what started as a family tragedy turned into a war for justice. After losing my 6-year-old daughter Lily, I returned from her grave to find my mother-in-law Margaret literally trashing Lily's room to make space for her other son's miracle baby. Margaret called my daughter's memory nonsense, but she didn't realize I owned the house, and I caught every vile word on 4K security cameras. The drama escalated when Thomas discovered the ultimate betrayal, a medical report proving he had a vasectomy years ago, making Margaret's miracle heir a physical impossibility. As we dug deeper into Margaret's lies, we uncovered forged signatures and a hidden safe in the attic that Lily had kept secret. Now, with the eviction notice served and the police on standby, the walls are finally closing in on Margaret's web of deceit, and now, the next episode is here. The air in Lily's room was still thick with the scent of strawberry shampoo and old memories, but the vibration of my phone felt like an alarm bell. I stared at the screen. Jennifer, the woman Margaret was so eager to move into my home, wasn't calling to gloat. When I finally answered, her voice was trembling, and she wasn't at a baby shower. She was in a parking lot, crying. Veronica, she whispered, I saw the security footage Thomas sent to Jason. I saw what Margaret did to your daughter's room. I can't be a part of this. That's when the tea started overflowing. Jennifer confessed that she wasn't some miracle mom-to-be. She had no idea Jason had a vasectomy 3 years ago because he'd lied to her about it. But the real kicker, Margaret knew. Margaret had approached Jennifer weeks ago with a twisted deal. She promised Jennifer that if she secured the Harrington legacy, Margaret would pay off Jennifer's massive student debts and find them a family estate to live in. I felt my blood turn to ice. Margaret wasn't just clearing out Lily's room because she was impatient. She was trying to gift my house to Jason and Jennifer as part of a bribe. She'd promised them a home that wasn't even hers to give. Jennifer told me Margaret was pressuring her to sign family documents that Thomas wasn't supposed to see. Margaret was trying to legally maneuver Thomas out of his own inheritance while his daughter's bed was still warm. Jennifer then dropped a bomb that made the vasectomy look like a minor detail. She had a recording of Margaret explaining exactly why she hated my daughter so much. Thomas stood in the living room, holding the vasectomy records like a weapon. As Margaret walked in, glowing with pride about the new baby, Thomas didn't say a word. He just turned the paper around. The color drained from her face as I hit play on the security footage of her admitting she knew the truth all along. But just as she opened her mouth to lie one last time, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I have the real DNA results, and you aren't going to believe who the father actually is. Jennifer sent me a voice memo she'd captured during a planning brunch with Margaret. In the recording, Margaret's voice was sharp and clear. She wasn't just talking about nurseries, she was talking about purity. She told Jennifer that Lily tainted the family image because she was a constant reminder that Thomas had chosen a woman with a past. She actually said she felt relieved when the diagnosis came because it meant the interruption to the Harrington line would be temporary. I played the recording for Thomas. I watched his knuckles go white as he listened to his own mother celebrate the cleansing of his home. Thomas didn't just want Margaret out of our lives anymore. He wanted her to lose everything she valued, her reputation and her precious family name. He looked at me and said, "She wants a fresh start? Let's give her one." In court, we realized Margaret had used family funds to pay the movers and was potentially embezzling from a trust Lily was supposed to have for her treatments. Margaret thought she was the puppet master, but she'd left a trail of digital breadcrumbs a mile wide. We weren't just putting a room back together anymore. We were building a cage for the woman who tried to erase our child. But then Jason called. He didn't know Jennifer had talked to us, and he was about to make a massive mistake that would seal Margaret's fate. We finally got the locksmith to open the safe we found hidden behind Lily's old dollhouse. My heart was pounding, thinking I'd find toys or drawings. Instead, the heavy door creaked open to reveal a stack of legal documents and a voice recorder. I pressed play, and Lily's small voice filled the room. Grandma told me not to tell, but I saw what she did to the papers in the desk. Thomas and I looked at each other in horror. Margaret wasn't just cruel. She was a criminal, and she was standing right behind us in the doorway. "The trap is set 10 cell," Jason called Thomas, sounding panicked. He tried to claim Jennifer was confused about the pregnancy and that he was planning a reversal surgery soon. He was clearly reading from a script Margaret had written for him. Thomas played along. his voice dripping with fake sympathy. He invited them both and Margaret over for a reconciliation dinner the following Sunday. Margaret actually had the nerve to text me, saying she was glad we were all seeing reason and that she'd bring the champagne. She thought she'd won. She thought the purple princess nonsense was finally behind her, and she was about to get her proper nursery. Little did she know, Jennifer was already at our house, helping us set up a very different kind of presentation in the dining room. We didn't just have the security footage from the bedroom. We had the bank statements. We had the medical records. And most importantly, we had the card Lily made for her. We weren't going to just yell at her. We were going to expose the Harrington matriarch in front of the only people she actually feared, her social circle. When Margaret walked in that Sunday, she wasn't met with a nursery. She was met with a laptop connected to the big screen TV and a lawyer sitting at the head of the table. The police stood on the porch as the movers began hauling Margaret's designer furniture onto the sidewalk. She was screaming about family loyalty, but the officers didn't care. The deed proved the house was mine. As she was being escorted to her car, she leaned in and whispered, "You think you won? Check the bank accounts, Veronica. I didn't just take the room. I took everything." I scrambled to open my banking app, and my breath hitched. The balance was zero. The look on Margaret's face when she saw the lawyer was better than any revenge I could have dreamed of. She tried to laugh it off, calling us dramatic again, but then Thomas hit play. He didn't play the security footage first. He played the recording of her saying she was relieved. Lily was gone. The room went ice cold. Jason tried to bolt, but Thomas told him to sit down because the next slide was Jason's own medical records and a paternity test Jennifer had secretly taken. The miracle baby? It wasn't Jason's. Jennifer had been honest with us. She had been at a crossroads, and Margaret had tried to manipulate her into a lie to save the family image. Margaret had been willing to build a life on a foundation of lies, just to feel like she was in control again. Thomas stood up and handed his mother a folder. It was a formal no-contact order and a demand for the return of the funds she'd siphoned from Lily's medical trust. "You wanted to focus on the future, Mom," Thomas said, his voice as steady as a heartbeat. "Your future is officially empty. You're not a grandmother, you're not a Harrington matriarch, and you're certainly not welcome in this house ever again." Margaret looked at the purple card sitting on the table, the one she'd thrown in the trash, and finally, for the first time, she had nothing to say. We tracked down Jennifer, the woman carrying the miracle baby, at a small cafe on the edge of town. She looked terrified the moment she saw us. I told her we knew about the vasectomy and that the lie was over. She started crying, shaking her head. "Margaret forced me into this," she sobbed. "But it's worse than you think. The baby isn't Thomas's brother's, and Margaret isn't trying to help me. She's trying to replace Lily." That's when she handed me a photo that made my world stop spinning. Crikey's, Margaret is gone. Jason is broke, and Jennifer is actually moving into the guest house to start a real life away from them. But yesterday I found a hidden safe in the attic that Margaret was trying to get the movers to take. It's locked, but Lily's name is engraved on the bottom. Want to see what's inside? Subscribe to Revenge Diaries and comment "Open it" for the series finale. Previously on the Revenge Diaries. Proud, the mask has finally slipped, and the Harrington matriarch is scrambling. In our last episode, the miracle pregnancy that was supposed to replace my daughter Lily was exposed as a total fraud. Confident, We discovered that Jason had a vasectomy years ago, meaning the baby Margaret was celebrating was a lie from the start. But the betrayal went deeper. We caught Margaret on a secret recording, admitting she viewed our daughter as an interruption to the family legacy. We watched as she tried to bribe Jennifer into stealing our home, offering up my house as if it were hers to give. The turning point. We set the ultimate trap. At a reconciliation dinner, Margaret thought she was winning. We turned on the big screen and served her the truth. Medical records, recorded confessions, and a legal no-contact order that stripped her of her status and her pride. Margaret is out. The locks are changed, and Lily's room is restored. But as we were clearing out the last of the shadows, we found it. Tucked away in the attic, under a floorboard Margaret never touched, is a heavy steel safe with Lily's name engraved on the front. The grandmother is gone, but the secrets she was trying to bury are just beginning to come to light. The dust in the attic settled as Thomas and I stared at the small, heavy safe we'd intercepted from the movers. Margaret had been desperate to get this out of the house. When we flipped it over, my breath hitched. Engraved in the metal was for Lily's 18th. My daughter wasn't even 7 when she passed, but it seemed someone had been planning for a future Margaret tried to claim didn't exist. We tried every birthday, every anniversary, but the safe wouldn't budge. Finally, Thomas looked at the purple card Lily had made for Margaret, the one with the shaky handwriting and the layers of glitter. He tried the date Lily had finished it. Click. The door creaked open. Inside wasn't just money or jewelry. It was a stack of letters and a legal envelope that turned Margaret's world upside down. It turns out my late grandmother, the one who left me the house, hadn't trusted Margaret either. The safe contained a hidden trust fund and a series of letters of intent signed by my grandmother and Lily's biological father. They had documented years of Margaret's subtle jabs and her attempts to pressure my grandmother into changing her will to favor Jason. That, the biggest reveal. A secret life insurance policy Lily's biological father had set up, with me as the trustee and Margaret as the one who had been trying to forge my signature to access it for Jason's debts. Margaret wasn't just trying to erase Lily's memory, she was trying to steal her future to pay for Jason's mistakes, and we just found the proof that could put her behind bars. As the safe door creaked open, we expected old jewelry, or perhaps some cash. But as Thomas pulled out the thick legal envelope hidden beneath a stack of letters, his face went completely white. He didn't find money. He found a life insurance policy in my name with a signature that looked exactly like mine, except I had never signed it. My heart stopped. Margaret wasn't just trying to move Jennifer in. She had been committing identity theft against me for years to fund Jason's lifestyle. And the worst part? There was one more document at the bottom of the safe, one that proved Margaret knew exactly what happened the night Lily got sick, and she had been hiding the truth from us since the funeral. Among the legal documents was a small, hand-drawn envelope. Lily had tucked a note inside months ago, almost like she knew she wouldn't be here to see it opened. It read, "Mommy, don't be sad. Make the house pretty for the next baby." Even in her final days, Lily was thinking about the big cousin she would have been. She wasn't talking about Jason's miracle lie. She was talking about the family she hoped we'd keep building. We realized then that keeping the room as a shrine wasn't what Lily wanted. But Margaret's way of clearing it out was an act of war, not love. Thomas called the police and handed over the forged documents found in the safe. Margaret's expensive new suit was about to be traded for an orange jumpsuit. She had spent years trying to push Lily to the side of the family photos, but now she was the one being cropped out of the family forever. As for the house, it's finally quiet. The purple princess nonsense stayed exactly where it was until we were ready to move. Jennifer moved into the guest suite, and she's become the sister I never had, helping us heal while she prepares for a baby that will actually be loved for who they are, not what name they carry. The last thing we did was mail a copy of Lily's purple glitter card to Margaret's lawyer. On the back, Thomas wrote, "She loved you. Too bad you weren't worth it." We stood there, clutching Lily's final wish to make the house pretty, while the blue and red lights of the police cruisers began to pulse against the purple walls of the nursery. We handed the detectives the forged documents, the secret ledgers, and the recording of Margaret's own voice. As they led a screaming, pearl-clad Margaret toward the patrol car in handcuffs, she looked back at me with a look of pure venom and hissed, "You think you've won? You have no idea what Jason is about to do." I watched the car pull away, but as I turned back to the house, I saw a shadow moving in the upstairs window, a window to a room that should have been empty. Looking back at the security footage, I don't see a mausoleum anymore. I see a home that stood its ground. Margaret thought she could walk in and dismantle a life while I was at a graveside. But all she did was prove that blood doesn't make a family, loyalty does. Thomas and I still sit in Lily's room sometimes, surrounded by the smell of strawberry shampoo and the glow of the butterfly mobile. Jason is currently facing fraud charges alongside his mother, and Jennifer is officially a part of our chosen family. The safe is empty now, but our hearts are finally full. We kept our promise to Lily. Her room remained a sacred space until it was ready to be a place of joy again. Margaret wanted a fresh start, and she got one, starting from scratch with nothing but her pearls and her regrets. Margaret is behind bars, Jason is awaiting trial, and the house is finally filled with the peace Lily always deserved. We kept our promise. The room stayed a sanctuary until it was ready to be a place of joy again. But as I sat down to write the final entry in these diaries, I realized something. The safe we found in the attic had a double bottom, and tucked inside that hidden compartment was a photograph of a woman I've never seen before, standing in front of this very house 30 years ago, with a younger Margaret looking terrified in the background. Margaret's secrets didn't start with Lily, they started decades ago, but that is a story for the next diary. That concludes the story of the Purple Butterfly Room. If you've ever dealt with a monster-in-law or fought to protect your child's legacy, you know that the best revenge is living well and keeping the receipts. This is Revenge Diaries, signing off. Don't forget to subscribe for our next deep dive into a family secret that should have stayed buried. What would you have done with the safe? What do you think was in that photo? Subscribe and comment "secret" to be the first to know when the next chapter drops.